Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. So I'm going to talk on the topic, building inner source communities and what goes behind the scenes to do that. Inner source is not just opening up the code base for reuse and contribution, but a lot of nuanced and time-sensitive work goes behind the scenes, and that is to nurture the community around inner source. So in this talk, I'll focus on the maintainer's role and the efforts that they put in to launch an inner source project and to sustain it. So before we start, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Shanmugapriya, and I go by Priya. I work as the open source engineering advisor and coach at IKEA in Sweden. I'm part of the open source program office at IKEA. And I work on governance and strategy around inner source and open source. And also I coach the teams on inner source and open source. I have 16 years of experience in the software industry, having worked in Sweden and India. I've worked in cloud technologies, virtualization, containerization, in product R&D divisions in enterprise storage domain before I joined IKEA. So I live in Sweden, and I'm a mother to a 9-year-old son, and I love reading and traveling, and sometimes like doing both at the same time. So that's enough about me, I guess. Let's dive into the topic. So is anyone here who has not heard of InnerSource? I know there are InnerSource veterans here, but does anyone not know about InnerSource? Okay, all of you are experts in InnerSource then, but bear with me for a minute or two for me to give an introduction to InnerSource for anyone who watches the recording later also. So InnerSource is applying open source ways of working within an organization. In simple terms, I will explain with a scenario. So consider a software that is being developed and maintained by a team. And it has a few internal dependencies. And these dependencies are owned and maintained by other teams within the organization. And each team has its own backlog, which is used to drive the development of the dependencies. And if there is an issue, or if there is a feature that needs to be developed in any of these dependencies, and that is a requirement for the software development team, in traditional ways of working, the team that develops the software would place the request with the team that maintains the dependency. And that requirement would go into their backlog, and when it gets prioritized, it gets implemented by the team. So here, the team that maintains the dependency is a kind of a bottleneck. So once it gets implemented, then it gets developed, used by the software development team. So instead of this traditional ways of working, if the code of this dependencies, of all these dependencies, is open for anyone within the organization to view and modify and contribute back, then if the team, that is the team that maintains the software, has bandwidth to make the contribution themselves, they can just develop it, raise a PR. And the team that, the team that maintains the dependencies then can just review and approve the PR. So the software development becomes much faster and removes the bottleneck. So this is exactly InnerSource. Well, this is one of the scenarios where InnerSource works. There are multiple other scenarios for InnerSource within an organization. So, yeah, so the benefits of InnerSource is it reduces the development time, it reduces the bottlenecks, and it improves the cross-team collaboration, and it enables software reuse. These are not the exhaustive list of all the benefits of InnerSource. These are just a few, and yeah, there are so many indirect and direct benefits. So with all these benefits, InnerSource looks perfect on paper, but are all InnerSource projects successful? What makes an InnerSource project sustain and become successful? And what makes all the difference? And who needs to do those needful tasks? The success of InnerSource lies in the reuse and collaboration, how well the solution is reused, and how good is the cross-team collaboration within the organization. Generally, an InnerSource project journey starts from being reusable, and then it gets the right traction from the potential users, and then it gets used, and then a community starts growing around that organically, and some of the community members then contribute back to the InnerSource project. So this community that I'm talking about isn't readily available. There is constant time and effort that needs to be put in by the maintainers throughout the journey from initiation till building the community and sustaining it. So from now on, by maintainers, I would denote the team that maintains the InnerSource project and owns it. So let's see what all steps the maintainers have to take from the launch of the InnerSource project till building the community and sustaining it. So first and foremost, as I mentioned earlier, the reusability aspect. For a solution to be InnerSourced, it has to be reusable, or rather, it should have multiple stakeholders. It can be, the stakeholders can be other engineering teams or product teams, technical marketing teams, etc. If there are no stakeholders, or if the solution is very specific, or if the solution is shipped as a whole by the maintaining team itself, then it is not a good candidate for, may not be a good candidate for InnerSourcing. So the maintainers have to assess the reusability aspect for InnerSourcing it. So InnerSource is not only a benefit of, reusability is not only a benefit of InnerSource, but also a key driving factor for InnerSource. And once the project is identified as InnerSourceable, the next step would be to make it InnerSource ready. Sometimes the solution has to be modularized. That makes it easy for reuse and consumption. And another aspect of making InnerSource ready is ensuring the repository readiness, which makes it easy for anyone outside the team to onboard and get started with the project. Repository readiness includes having standard documentation in place with clarity, visibility, and the permissions, the right permissions to be set in the repository. Following the standard documentation practices makes it helpful for the consumers to search in the relevant files and find the necessary information they want. And not just having it, but it also has to be clear and accessible for anyone getting started with the project. And the repository should also be visible for anyone within the organization, and it should also have the right permissions set for anyone to make a contribution, create a branch and make a contribution. So it is the responsibility of the InnerSource maintainers to ensure that the project is InnerSource ready. And the next aspect is discoverability. Making the repository visible to everyone within the organization does not mean that it is discoverable by the relevant stakeholders. It can get lost in thousands of other visible repositories within the organization. So here comes the need for making it distinctly visible as an InnerSource project. It can be as small as tagging the repository with InnerSource tag, or it can be as big as having a central portal, InnerSource portal, where all the InnerSource projects are listed, and it is easy for anyone to just find it and use it and contribute. So providing such a platform may be the responsibility of the central teams like ISPO or platform teams. But listing the InnerSource project in such a portal is, again, the responsibility of the maintainers. Next is the governance policy. It is important to have a project governance policy drafted and accessible for everyone, which clearly explains different aspects like who maintains the code, who reviews the PRs, and what is the lead time for review, and are there any code freeze times, and who maintains the contributed code, and how the team can resolve the conflicts when there are, conflicts when multiple teams collaborate. Again, it's the responsibility of the maintainers to have these guidelines drafted and visible to everyone. Next is transparency. All high-level, low-level design related to the InnerSource solution, architecture and design decisions, roadmap, and the features that are currently being worked upon, and the milestones planned, etc., should be recorded, versioned, and updated wherever applicable by the maintainers. Furthermore, all these have to be accessible and transparent to anyone who is new to the project, so that they are well informed about the history of the project, and they don't end up spending time to have the same revelations again, and also don't spend time in putting in duplicate efforts in fixing the same bugs or developing the same enhancements. And next is inclusiveness. Being inclusive and welcoming in the language used in the documentation is very important for an InnerSource project, because documentation acts like a gateway to anyone new to the project, InnerSource project, or any project for that matter. Inclusiveness also denotes being generic enough, that is not being very specific to the team or the product family the InnerSource project belongs to. So, for example, if there is a generic library that can be reused across multiple teams within the organization, then the repository naming and the documentation should be generic enough, and it should clearly denote the scope of the functionality and the usability of that specific solution. And as much as the maintainers prepare the repository and the project for inner sourcing, the maintainers also have to prepare themselves and the team to have an open mindset to take in the feedback and contributions from anyone outside the team. The maintaining team should not only be ready in terms of necessary time and bandwidth to support the community, but also have the right mindset towards collaborative development and co-creation. And establishing a communication channel through which the community can reach the maintainers is very important. Maintainers can go further by maybe running periodic community calls or office hours at regular intervals, so that the community is well informed about the progress and what is being planned and what is worked on. This communication channel should be a two-way communication channel, not just one way where the maintainers just pour in information to the community. So, to consolidate, the maintainers have to ensure the reusability, project readiness, discoverability, governance policy, transparency, inclusiveness, open mindset, and open communication. So you may ask me that all these are needed for all projects in the organization. So what is different? Yes, it is needed for all projects. It is good to have all of these in all internal projects. But for InnerSource projects specifically, these have to be of certain standards and perfect in some cases to make it successful. All these efforts by the maintainers to ensure all these aspects in terms of tech debts or non-functional requirements go unnoticed most of the times. So, yeah. So, is that all that the maintainers have to do to make an InnerSource project successful, or is there more? So whatever I mentioned previously or required until the project is made InnerSource, to sustain it and to build a community around it, there are some more things that the maintainers can do. So yeah, I will go over that also. So first is bridging the gap. Like any solution, the potential users should know about the availability of the solution. Only then it will be used, and then a community will will be built around it. Even though the project is listed in a central place like an InnerSource portal, it does not mean that it has reached the relevant users yet. We have to reduce the gap between the solution, the InnerSource solution, and the potential users. That can be done by the maintainers speaking at the forum that is specific to the potential users, the targeted users, and also letting them know that it is open for collaboration and reuse. So once once there are users to the InnerSource project, then the maintainers can include them to speak in further sessions and inspire others also to start using it. Next is to have a plan to nurture the community. The maintainers have to allocate the bandwidth, as I mentioned earlier, to answer the queries the community members might have, and to review the PRs, and also provide any help in the usage of the project. It's very important to provide a timely response to the queries from the users to build the community organically. So there is need for conscious effort towards community building by the maintainers. And finally, once the users start contributing, it is very important to acknowledge the contributions, irrespective of the size of the contributions they make. Acknowledgements and recognition go a long way in not only motivating someone, but also inspiring others to join the league. It can be as small as recording all the contributions in acknowledgements MD file in the repository, or it can be as big as having a rewards and recognition program internally within the organization and publicizing the contributions in wider forums. It will also be significant if the value and the impact of the contributions are also recorded and acknowledged. So to hold the community together, the maintainers can also go further by adopting open source ways of working, like promoting some of the community members as trusted committers and giving them more responsibilities like driving the community meetings or resolving the queries or other responsibilities that the maintainers have. Delegate those responsibilities to the community members also. So to consolidate, after launching an InnerSource project, the maintainers have to consciously take efforts to bridge the gap between the solution and the potential users, have a plan to nurture the community, and acknowledge the contributions from the community, and entrust the community members with the responsibilities too. So that brings us to an InnerSource journey roadmap for the maintainers, starting with building a reusable software, ensuring that the project is ready for InnerSource, making it discoverable, and so on, till building and nurturing the community. So it is the responsibility of the maintainers to follow all of these steps strategically to make it successful. All these may sound familiar, similar to the open source ways of working. Again, there may be a question as, is there a difference in the community building process between an open source project and the InnerSource project? To contribute to open source projects, one may feel motivated and feel personally rewarding. But to contribute to InnerSource projects, most of the time, anyone outside the team would not contribute unless there is an incentive connected to it or if they really use the project. So that is why the maintainers need to go an extra mile to promote it, sustain it, and to make it a successful project. So to summarize, a lot goes behind the scenes to successfully driving and maintaining an InnerSource project. As much as we celebrate and appreciate the contributions to the InnerSource, the open source projects and the maintainers of the open source projects, and also as much as we appreciate the contributions to the InnerSource projects, we need to recognize the efforts of the maintainers of InnerSource projects too, in the same way or maybe more. So yeah, that brings us to the end of this presentation. So are there any questions? Thank you. Yes.
Hi. So we're looking to build an InnerSource set of repos at our company, which traditionally didn't really know what open source was. So do you have any examples of maybe some documentation for some of these governance and policies and all that, just kind of as a starting point? Because my team has the idea, we kind of know some of the challenges we're going to face, but getting some of this, getting it a step up and some formalization of how we're going to run this to make the proper cases to leaders would be helpful.
Sure, yeah. Maybe I'll repeat the question for sake of others. So you are planning to drive InnerSource within the organization, and you are looking for any guidelines, reference guidelines that are available to get started with InnerSource. So we have a lot of documentation and reference available in InnerSource Commons, the nonprofit organization, and you can refer to the GitHub repository, the InnerSource Commons GitHub repository, and we have a lot of reference there. And you can also speak to Russ Rutledge, who is, I think, the director of the InnerSource Commons too. Yeah. Any more questions? Yes.
What strategies do you recommend for connecting the dots between like the business reasons why we want to do InnerSource to leadership to get their employees to be able to participate in InnerSource initiatives?
Okay. One way could be like having org level goals. Strategically have org level drive towards InnerSource so that it comes top down. And the other way is also to bring together the co-workers who are familiar with open source ways of working and make them the advocates of InnerSource. So that the drive comes both ways. So because I believe one way, drive either top down or bottom up will not fully bring in the transformation. It has to come both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you very much. It was a very good presentation, and especially, the very end, all the roadmap, I think that's brilliant. And so I have no question from my side, just a remark or an addition. You said, these are all the things that you need to do in order to establish a successful InnerSource program. Now, how do you know if your InnerSource program is successful? Or how do you know a particular project is successful in InnerSource, right? And so we're at this point where, so at I work for Mercedes-Benz. Our executives are asking, we have implemented a lot of these things, is InnerSource successful? And in order to be able to tell that, you need some kind of KPIs, because without, as Daniel Izquierdo from the InnerSource Commons likes to say, without data, you're just someone with an opinion, right? So yeah, I think it's successful. But so, for example, we're in the process of implementing metrics, and one of the key metrics I think is how many contributions does a project get from someone outside of the core project team, and if that's a lot, or then you can determine is it successful in that sense. Another way would be, how many people are using my InnerSource project? Maybe not contributing, but reusing my project. And then there are a few others. So just as some thought.
Yes, that's right. So having the metrics and measuring the contributions, as you said, would help determine whether it is successful or not, of course. Thank you.
So I have a microphone for more questions. Who are you?
Can I have a remark? I just wanted to add on metrics or things to track that have been useful at my organization for promoting or making this tie with InnerSource and the business. So besides the things you can automate through metrics, a big part is also storytelling. And numbers on their own tell a story, but when I get to a certain level, usually kind of senior director, VP, like even the numbers, if they're very impressive, they don't tell enough of a story. So one thing we do is we have a quarterly InnerSource reports where I ask the relevant projects involved. One thing I ask them to report on is a list of items that are on a business unit roadmap that are delivered with InnerSource. I want to know the specific items, because the idea is this is accelerating the work we're already doing. We don't take time off to the side. So I can put, these are the roadmap items that were delivered, leveraging InnerSource as a contribution or consumption, or they created a new InnerSource project to show that. And then also any key features that are really important in your company, and you might know those, or people in the delivery business units might know what those features are. Even if you don't have any numbers, if you get the people who worked on the feature to say, InnerSource really helped us to deliver this, some key feature, key contract that your company is trying to fill, a key client, and the people involved will just give a testimonial, yes, InnerSource helped with this, and back you up. I've found those also to be useful on top of the numbers in telling the story of InnerSource.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for an impressive talk. This question might be, this is a question for anyone here. Well, this question is about the readiness or transparency. Well, often we have isolated projects because of some customer is different or something. Well, and according to the policy of the ISMS, Information Security Management, in that case, we cannot access to some other repository, and that probably prevent the inner source. So my question is, do you have any issue like that? And if yes, how to overcome?
So you had, okay, you can answer it.
So at a previous company, was a defense contractor and working with the U.S. DoD, which if anybody has ever dealt with them before, they're lots of fun, and they like their own little corner of the world that you develop on. One thing that my previous company did, I don't know if it was called InnerSource yet, but they at least managed to make some common repositories, is they looked at similarities of code across different projects, and anything that seemed similar but wasn't behind some kind of security barrier, they pulled out and put into a common area, and just you were able to kind of inherit from that and then make your own modifications, your own copy essentially, which not ideal, but that was the way that we handle it in defense, which I don't know how strict the security rules are in your company, but defense contractors, that's a large pain. In my current company, it's a lot, it's medical now, so we can do a lot more sharing across projects that we're trying to do. But I think that might be a way to handle it, is just really pull really small core pieces out that people just don't have to rebuild.
Thank you. Thank you for answering. Any more questions? Okay.
I wanted to hear her answer to the previous answer to the previous question.
So your question was specific to the how do we have the common practices around isolated projects, right? So yeah. So the thing is, well, we at OSPO or the ISPO central teams can maybe come up with the guidelines around how an InnerSource project should look like, so that it is common. I mean, it acts as a common standard for anyone who is InnerSourcing their solution. So that kind of acts like a reference draft. Yeah, that is one other way of doing it. Any more questions? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.